you very much. I would like to start with some thanks and some apologizes. Thanks to Mariano and to all the devoted people and organizations who brought us here. I always am so deeply impressed by people who would come on a Friday afternoon to discuss the Palestinian problem, to listen to lectures. I can assure you that would it be in Tel Aviv, no way that 1/10% of this audience would have showed up to listen to Gideon Levy or to come to discuss anything about the occupation and the Palestinian state. And two apologizes, first of all, for the very bad fact that I don't speak Italian and we need a translator here. And secondly, that in the time we are sitting here, something much less important is taking place in New York, but I have to follow it and to write about it for my newspaper, so we'll have to leave quite early to follow the two speeches of Mahmoud Abbas and Netanyahu in the UN. The occupation, the Israeli occupation in the West Bank and Gaza is still very far from its end. And I'm not sure that what will happen tonight in the UN will bring the end of it into a shorter way, into any kind of pathway. Change will not come from within the Israeli society. I'm very sorry to say so, but in the Israeli society there are too many agencies which are working exactly to the opposite direction. So anyone who expects change from within the Israeli society, forget about it. There were more brutal occupations in history. There were also longer occupations in history, even though the Israeli occupation in the West Bank and Gaza is becoming one of the longest, but there were longer and more brutal occupations in history. But as far as I know, this is the first occupation in history in which the occupier have no moral doubts about it whatsoever, and what is even more unheard of, this is for sure the first occupation in history in which the occupier presents himself as the victim, and as the only victim. There are no moral questions, not because the Israelis are monsters or unusual human beings. There are no moral questions in Israel because the Israeli society is being brainwashed systematically in order to enable this situation to last for so long without creating any moral questions. Part of the Israelis are people with values. Maybe not all of them, but part of them are people with values. In any catastrophe in the world, earthquake or floods, you always see Israeli missions, many times the first missions which are sent to save lives. Many Israelis will help an old lady to cross the road, many times even if she does not want to cross the road. There are people with values. And it took me many years to understand what happens to these people, which is no better than other people, but also no worse than other people. What makes these people feel so good about himself when in the backyard of our homes, half an hour away from our homes, there is this brutal, cruel, inhuman and criminal reality, and Israelis wouldn't care less. I'm covering the Israeli occupation for 25 years now, and this question really bothered me until one day I was standing in the checkpoint of Kalandia, which is a main checkpoint between Ramallah and Jerusalem. Not in the present situation of it, but a few years ago when the checkpoint of Kalandia looked different. And then I think I understood why the Israelis can live so much in peace with such a brutal reality. It was a summer day, very hot. Hundreds, if not thousands, of Palestinians were waiting in the checkpoint. There was no roof to protect them from the sun. There was no water. There were no toilets. A lot of garbage, sand. Terrible scene. And I was asking myself, why is there no water? Why is there no roof? Why are there no toilets? Is it a question of budget? No. And then I got this banal conclusion. The authorities don't want the soldiers to have any kind of feeling that they are confronting human beings like them. And therefore, anything which has to do with human needs should be covered up, should not be there. Because only when those young soldiers of 18 and 19 will perceive those Palestinians in front of them, not as human beings like them, only then they will never ask questions. I remember I wrote then that we are treating the Palestinians like animals. And then I got so many protest letters from animal rights organizations claiming that animals have also some rights. But the truth is that the only way to maintain this occupation for so many years and feeling so good about ourselves, the real answer and the only answer is this ongoing process, very, very systematic process of dehumanizing the Palestinians year after year, day after day, decade after decade. Because I truly believe that if you will scratch the skin of almost any Israeli I know, left or right, religious or secular, if you just scratch a little bit his skin, you will realize that he never and will never treat the Palestinians as equal human beings like us. This is the core for everything, because as long as this will continue, no peace conference, no UN resolution, nothing will bring a solution. As long as Israelis will not perceive the Palestinians as human beings like them, as equal human beings with equal rights, nothing will change. I remember once I interviewed Ehud Barak, former Prime Minister of Israel, and I asked him, it was on TV, I asked him, what would have happened, Mr. Barak, if you would have been born Palestinian? And at this stage, when he was just in his first stages in politics, before he became Prime Minister, he gave me the only honest answer he could give. He said, I would have joined a terror organization. And then it became a huge scandal. But I asked it only to try what I am trying in vain for 25 years now. I tried to put the Israelis, or at least my viewers or my readers or whoever, to try to imagine themselves being instead of the Israelis. This is almost impossible, because if you dehumanize somebody, you cannot put yourself in his position. In another occasion, I was once at the Jenin checkpoint, and when I arrived there, this was in the days of the Second Intifada, when I arrived, in front of me there was a Palestinian ambulance. I stopped behind the ambulance, and I was waiting. 15 minutes, half an hour. The ambulance with red lights, the soldiers in the tent playing backgammon. After 40 minutes, I couldn't take it anymore, and I went out of the car, and I asked the ambulance driver, the Palestinian ambulance driver, what's going on? He said, that's the way they always do for us. they let us wait 1 hour until they come to check the ambulance. And then I really freaked out. And I went to the soldiers. And I asked them only one question. What would have happened if your father would have been in this ambulance? Or your mother? Or your grandmother? And this question freaked them out so much that they aimed their guns at me and almost shot me. Because I touched the most sensitive nerve. How can you compare my father to a Palestinian father? Or if to put it in a more humorous way, when once member of the Knesset, Ahmad Tibi, who is an Israeli Palestinian, who is a doctor also, he was asked by the interviewer, Dr. Tibi, what are you? Are you Palestinian or are you a doctor? You must decide. You have to decide. So the dehumanization is, in my view, the problem and also the solution. It is being systematically brought to the Israeli public opinion, mainly by the Israeli media, but also by the education system and by some other social agencies. And when this is going on for decades, on a systematic basis, when the two peoples don't meet anymore at all, an average Israeli had never met a Palestinian, an average Palestinian had never met an Israeli except of the soldier who treats him like shit. When this reality is in front of us, to expect a rapid solution is almost an illusion. It's very long also because Israelis don't pay almost anything for the occupation. Life in Israel is wonderful. And even if they pay, they don't see the connection between the price and the occupation. The world is now isolating Israel like never before. Israelis have found an answer to this as well. The answer is very simple. The world is anti-Semitic. The world would be against us in any case, whatever we do. So why would we bother? It's the world's fault, not our fault. 140 or 150 states will vote in the coming weeks against the position of Israel, United States, and not forget Micronesia. And Israelis will be deeply convinced that it is the world's fault, not theirs, that the just is with us, 5 million Jews, and not with 7 billion people of the world, that we can go on like this with this isolation and will never believe or think that a solution, an end to the occupation, can be of an interest of Israel. It's not only about morality. It's about the existence of this country. It's about the security of this country. It's about the future of this country. Will it live forever on its sword? The answer is no, because the new sword is technology. The new sword is missiles. The new sword is nuclear weapons. And Israel will not survive without peace. And one last word, two last words, one about you and one about myself. About you, about Europe, I must tell you I cannot understand the growing gap between the official positions of governments in Europe and the public opinions in Europe. I cannot get it. I don't understand it. I don't know why is this gap, but this gap is growing. Europe is still, official Europe is still basically supporting the Israeli occupation. Not to speak about the United States, with this unbelievable disappointment from Barack Obama, who started as such a big hope and ends up now as maybe the most shameful American president when it comes to the Middle East. So this is the word about the world. Because we need the world, because change will not come within. Change will only come from the outside.
Quindi vorrei
5 years now that I try to tell the Israelis or the readers of my newspaper a story that they don't want to hear, don't want to read about. It's 25 years that I'm being accused, more and more so, as a traitor, as a self-hating Israeli, as an Israeli hater, as an enemy. The Independent even wrote about me that I'm the most hated Israeli, which in a way is a compliment. But my only wish is, and I think it's a legitimate wish of in my view, a genuine patriot, and I perceive myself as a patriot of Israel. My only wish is to be more proud of my country. This is a luxury that I must tell you I didn't experience for a long time.
Al mukawama mișcată miez agenda mia Palestina ce l'insegno su sistema e pazzia resistenza popolare tutto quanto miezza via intifada paura sciavia